Good afternoon, welcome to the Green Hospitality Happy Hour talk. We have these casual talks every month. So the purpose is really to explore sustainability and trends in the hospitality industry. I would like to just ask everybody to stay muted for the moment, but later on, as we have more discussion coming up, we will welcome you to submit your questions or even unmute and discuss with us. My name is Lucia, and I'm Director of Green Hospitality and also will be the host of this event today for you. I would like to introduce a little bit about Green Hospitality if you have not heard about us yet before. Green Hospitality is a not-for-profit organization that is based in Hong Kong, and we focus on building and sharing knowledge, also connecting the stakeholders along the sustainability and hospitality supply chains, and also create solutions together in these partnerships and through these collaborations so that we can achieve the SDGs and bring about positive impact to the hospitality industry, not only in Hong Kong, but also in other locations. So thank you very much for joining us today for the Happy Hour talk. And our topic today will be green recovery and sustainable tourism development. And it's my pleasure that Dr. Marafa from the Chinese University of Hong Kong has accepted the invitation for today and share with us what he knows about sustainable tourism, but also the pandemic situation and how that impacts behavior of tourists and of us with regards to leisure activities and tourism. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Marafa.
You're welcome.
Let me introduce you all, Dr. Marafa, a little bit before we start with our questions and the interview. So Dr. Marafa, as I said, is a professor of the Department of Geography and Resource Management at the Chinese University here in Hong Kong. He's also a founding director of postgraduate program in sustainable tourism. He's a senior fellow at the World Leisure Academy and serves as a vice chair of the board of directors of the World Leisure Organization. He also serves as a member of the UN World Committee on Tourism Ethics. Dr. Marafa was awarded Exemplary Teacher Award in 2005 and received the Royal Belém Inaugural Ecotourism Award, Perak, Malaysia, and served as a facilitator at the Clinton Global Initiative. He is also the convener of the annual conference on sustainable tourism at the Chinese University of Hong Kong since 2012. His teaching and research cover tourism and environment, tourism policy, sustainable tourism, agricultural and food security, natural resources management, climate change, and SDGs. Dr. Marafa has led several research projects and published extensively over the past 3 decades. And one of the researches that we're going to also look into today is specifically about the Sars epidemic and the changing behavior of in consumption of tourism and leisure activities. So Dr. Marafa, I will start with some questions. And as we speak, I would like to encourage the other participants to also ask questions in our chat. And my first question is really, we had almost a year ago, our first Happy Hour talk, to which we invited Professor Brian King from PolyU. And we were discussing on the different projections for the tourism industry at that moment when the pandemic just started. Now, a year later, we are here again. Can you maybe briefly tell us what has happened to the hospitality and tourism industry worldwide and in Hong Kong, perhaps? What is the current situation? Have you observed any peculiar adaptations of the industry and the sector under the current pandemic?
All right. Thank you very much, Lucia, and thank you also, I think, Karen, for making this happen. Karen was very pushy, but in a good sense, right? So she pushed a lot, and I had to succumb. So that's very nice, and I appreciate what you guys are doing in the green hospitality, concept. Even though I don't know so much about it, but I hope I will learn, as we move on, and I certainly look forward to getting more information, from you. I think your question is, to me, a very serious question, and it's really something that we have to look at and basically move on to see how we can answer. Initially, we have to understand that tourism itself, I will not like to make a blanket cover, but I will probably say it's one of the maybe top 3 or top 2 industries that have actually suffered drastically as a result of pandemic, and indeed as a result of any other crisis that has happened along the way. And that means the financial crisis previously, the SARS previously. If you go beyond Asia and Hong Kong, and so on, some sort of diseases. We have global diseases maps that we sometimes look at. One of the reasons is because tourism interacts with the society generally. And it's also, if you like, a major economic sector for many countries, I will say. Some countries basically go as far as 20% of their GDP as a result of tourism. So if a pandemic happens like this, and we claim it affects our industry, and I say our industry because I think we are studying or we are part of this industry, then we look at the whole thing from basically the whole tourism value chain. So we understand tourism as an industry, but of course, I make an analogy with an octopus, because octopus have 8 legs, if you like, or 8 hands, I still don't know. But then it basically catches everything. So that's what tourism does. As a system, you have everything covered. So when we look at the value chain of tourism, I think there are maybe 4 or 5 things that we will relate to as far as what the pandemic has caused. I think number 1 is the economy, the unprecedented economic impact. As one of the largest industries in the world, then according to UNWTO, it has actually affected almost 9 to 11% of global trade from last year till now. Now those figures kept changing. So it is possible that those figures are either going up or probably going down, but that is another discussion altogether. So with that trend, it has, I think by the end of 2020, it has reduced the global GDP by 2.8%. And that is that's a huge amount if you are looking at GDP in terms of economic performance. So 2.8, maybe 3%, and so on. And so that's one. So with that kind of issue, that means the economy has impacted a lot. So that's what I said about 4 or 5 things. So with the economy being impacted, then it also affects naturally the livelihood of many people who are basically engaged in the tourism industry. And I think most of you will know, we have those that are directly engaged in the tourism industry. We have those that are indirectly engaged in the tourism industry. But I'm not making an academic discussion in this sense. I just want to say that it has affected the livelihood of many people. And so in that sense, I think last year in November, when we had a meeting like Zoom on this, we were told that it has affected close to 120 million direct jobs. Okay, that was last year. I think that was November, before Christmas. So 120 million, that's huge. And so a large percentage of this group of people are those who we consider in the front line. And one of my group members at that time, and still a member, is actually from ILO. ILO is the International Labor Organization. So they do the statistics. And so what they told us was women constituted 54% of that workforce that was infected. And then, of course, the youth. you can make, calculation. Of course, women not everywhere. In the Middle East, women do not constitute a large number of tourism employees. In Europe, women basically take over. I mean, Spain, I think Lucia will know, and France, and other places. So the livelihood of people and families basically was terribly affected. I think the third thing will be natural resources and culture. I just put all those together, in the context of sustainability. So nature and culture. And so with the reduction of tourism, many countries lost out in the protection and conservation of biodiversity. I give you an example. I mean, a large number of African countries, they depend so much on money from tourism to take care of biodiversity. And if you look at travel to African continent, for example, it's like 80% is about wildlife. You want to see wildlife, you want to see safari, blah, blah, and so on. But then that amount has reduced. And so globally, we have 7%, about 7 to 8% of our total tourism is actually about wildlife, from koalas in Australia to, of course, elephants, in Thailand, and so on, to panda in China. You just name it. So you got that amount. So if there is a reduction in tourism, then that money that goes into nature and wildlife basically reduces. I will be fast in this. If we look at culture, then both tangible and intangible have also been affected. A lot of museums were closed. 90% of the museums were closed. So they were not generating revenue, but people were using social distancing and keeping the place safe and clean. So there was no money being gained in that direction. Because of lockdown, and of course, you can chip in here. Some people, of course, in Europe, I think it started in Italy, they found a way of doing their concert. They either come out on their windows or, they start shouting. So they were cheering people up. But essentially, cultural heritage practices and festivals were not, happening. People were not, dancing in groups. People, were not telling stories. Gatherings were either stopped or postponed until a certain stage. And then because of that, so many markets were also closed. Souvenirs, those that were produced previously, are just lying down, nobody was buying. And then there was no incentive to produce more handcrafts, and souvenirs. So we can go on and on, but maybe let me just stop here and see how we can move on. This is basically a global perspective. And if one relates that to Hong Kong, then certainly what I have been saying also holds true. If you look at in our own case, the theme parks were basically closed. We also saw that the museums also were literally closed. Many of those festivals, I think the Bond Festival in Chengchao, however, was not like what people, used to see. So quite a few things. Even the recent flower market that I have visited for the past 15 years, I never miss it because it ties in very well to what I do, particularly my teaching in this semester. I love the flower market, but then it was really subdued, right? It was, I mean, if you look at Victoria Market at that time, the shades were all on the side, right? So it's rather a square or a rectangle that was created, and people were discouraged, to go there in crowds. So livelihoods, economy, protection and preservation of natural resources, intangible heritage, tangible heritage, cultural practices, festivals, all these were basically affected, and it's on an unprecedented scale. Yeah.
Right. That is a really thank you so much for painting that picture and giving us some examples, especially relationship with the protection of the natural resources, which might not be so obvious, but actually it's impacted by lowered interest in tourism. We would think maybe that nature is there by itself and we don't really need to do, and especially if you don't go there, it's okay. But actually for some places, it's maybe not okay, because we need protection from the poachers, we need protection for the endangered species. So moving on to another question that I have here for you is with regards to the innovations. We know that under challenging situations, we can see sprouting innovations, you know, and then I think the global pandemic would be one of those pressures that have been created, as you rightly mentioned. Some business cannot just go on anymore. We have a little bit touched upon how some nations have been innovative. We have had Amazon Explore, which has created these virtual tours. Some of the museum has opened completely free the virtual tours so that people could still have access to arts and to culture during these times. What else, besides being innovative, is needed to keep the industry going? What do you think would be the next right step? What we can see, we already have a little bit easing a situation here in Hong Kong, also with the vaccinations coming up in many places. What do you think we can start with doing so that the tourism industry, after such a hard year, can still sustain? How can the businesses that actually have made it until this far can do?
Yeah, again, I will probably, you know, just follow up. There is already some sort of easing, you know, like you said. And so people have realized that. And we keep saying in the beginning, the mantra was stay safe so that you can travel later, right? So when people were asked, you know, to quarantine, to lockdown, you know, and so on, the idea was, okay, if you are safe now, at a later stage, you can basically, you know, go on. Now that also covered, like I said earlier, the livelihood, you know, of the local people. Because if you are into the tourism industry, it's actually not a one-way street. It's everyone that is involved. The local people are involved, or, you know, let me just say the people at the destination are involved, and of course those people who are coming in. So if you are looking at that, you know, as an economic thing, as you know, trying to reboot tourism back, then we have to look at those people, you know, particularly the livelihoods of those local people who receive basically the tourists. So that's one. However, the travel, or let me just say the tourism industry is actually changing. You know, maybe later when we discuss, we will see, you know, maybe either drastically or you know, in a simplistic manner is changing. But then we will also have to make sure that we either maintain that competitiveness that allows people to visit, or we maintain those attractions that will also attract people, you know, to come. So how do we do that? I'm not sure at the moment, but a lot of people, you know, have started. I mean, Singapore, it's basically trying to do a bit. Thailand has, you know, already trying to open up, you know, quite a few people. Last week, I don't know how many of you saw, but last week there was this huge concert in Amsterdam, which basically they tested people before going into the concert. And the idea is that in another 1 week, 2 weeks, you know, and so all those people who attended will also be tested. So to see, you know, how far we have gone with our, you know, social distancing. And also, I think in Kenya, for example, Romania, and I think essentially Bulgaria is going to follow that suit. So Romania has never had a tour guide, I mean, a tourism venture going into Kenya, for example. So last week was the first time. basically they had a whole lot of Boeing 737, bringing people in. So they are testing the waters. And to me, this is actually also somehow trying to move, into competitiveness. Now, if these efforts prove viable, if the efforts, like the one in Amsterdam and these travels to Thailand and other places, if they seem okay, then to some extent, we are basically building, resilience. And that will allow the local people, also to inject some sort of diversification, with what tourism can do. And then, of course, in that sense, and I think that also relates to Hong Kong very well, we have to be able to consider the small and medium enterprises, so because those also make tourism interesting, in particular places. You mentioned innovation. I think, there's so much to talk about innovation. If you look at people always come up with smart tourism, and so on and so forth. But the innovation goes beyond that, because it's basically talking about a digital transformation of tourism. And that simply means you are not only looking at those, what we call smart infrastructure, not only smart infrastructure. By the way, we have started, in Hong Kong. If you go to the museum in the Tsim Sha Tsui waterfront, you will see, QR code, and you are right there. But that's a different story. But so you need also digital skills, because there is a large number of employees in the tourism industry that are still not that, digitally, if you like, not digitally, okay, as I would say. But so we need all that. I think the last one for me is we basically have to do that with sustainability, in mind, because now we are seeing that, whatever is the case, we actually need that aspect, of sustainability, if you like, to restart or maybe to reinvent, the tourism business.
So you already mentioned the restarting tourism in some destinations, trying to already kind of open up. But we know that, for instance, in Hong Kong, it's very difficult. We can't even go outside. If you want to come back, you would need to stay in quarantine 21 days. Very hard for people. So even if people want to travel or would risk it and go or take the precautions and be healthy, or maybe took vaccinations and feel more safe to travel. So I'd like to know, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the vaccine passports that have been advertised, as well as the travel bubbles? Do you think that's maybe a possible way for tourism to resume within the regions or even globally?
Yeah, well, I think two things here. The vaccine passport, I think it's inevitable. I mean, we started actually discussing this in our committee I think it was in April last year. April 2020 was the first time we basically started discussing this. And at that time, we had to let people remember that there used to be a time that if you do not have a yellow card, then you may not be able to travel. I don't know how many of you will remember, but we used to have a yellow card. And many countries required you to have a yellow card to basically, travel. So when you go to check in, and that was the time when, the tickets were actually tangible tickets. You take them. They are not on your iPhone or on internet or whatever. You have to get the ticket, which was, long like this, and your passport. So you put your ticket, your passport, and your yellow card to basically allow you, to travel. So that was one. So when the vaccine, if you like, now we are talking about getting that vaccine passport. So there are quite a few things. It is, a laudable idea, a very good idea, because even for nothing, it will give you a confidence, and it will also give the destination some sort of confidence that the guy or the guys that are coming are actually not carriers, right? So they are not carriers, of the virus. But again, like I said, a few people are discussing, a few people are talking, and this is globally. And I will have to tell you that even the United Nations basically was discussing this. It has to be in such a way that it is ethical, because when it started, there was some sort of price tag that was being considered. And so if you put in a price tag that will alienate other travelers, then you are basically not doing the right thing. But the bottom line is, it is inevitable, it's going to happen. And I think that is one step, that we can be able to move on. But I'm open, to questions. I think the second part is the travel bubbles. Yes, travel bubbles are there, and I remember that maybe as far back as October, it is from last year that Singapore and Hong Kong basically started discussing. They had a date, the date was postponed. They had another date that was also postponed. They also had, I have two very good friends in Singapore who are just willing to basically make a trip. And so they have always been in contact. Now that can happen, and that is what I'm saying earlier, that Thailand is actually basically trying to open up. I mean, even this morning I had some discussions, and if you go out, I don't know how many of you have been. I think I was in the Chimsa Choi MTR station maybe 3 weeks or maybe last month, before the Chinese New Year anyway, and Thailand has already started advertising. They give you Phuket, they give you Chiang Mai, they give you Bangkok, and they will, show you it's a rolling advertisement. It's still there, and they basically tell you the temperature today, what you can do today, and so on. So they sort of bring in people, psychologically telling people that we are still there and we are basically willing to come. I think that is the thing, and then the other one is domestic tourism. I think many countries are doing it. Hong Kong, even though we may say day trippers, or whatever going out, but there are still opportunities to basically go out there, and explore. So that is basically what I think.
Right. Thank you so much. So I think we can really think of those destinations that will have the travel bubbles established soon, and the vaccination maybe progress further along the way, might be the first ones to recover their tourism in a way. Those are already preparing for it right now. I am really curious about your study about the SARS epidemic that you conducted years ago, and you are essentially looking at the behavior pattern of Hong Kong residents towards leisure and outdoor activities that were impacted by this epidemic. So maybe I would love to hear more about that. What did you find out, and whether this kind of pattern maybe can be applied to the current situation? Are there similarities perhaps? Could we expect the same things happen?
Yeah, I think you are putting me on a hot seat, and that is, I always, like to say, this was done, I think, 2003 or 2004, thereabout. But yes, that was a pandemic also. I mean, that was basically the first time that people were quarantined. People basically, they were actually self-quarantined, because it was not like you have to go and quarantine, but all of a sudden the shopping malls become empty. I mean, we are right here very close to Shatin. You go to Shatin, you will not see 10 people in the shopping malls. So we went out, with a couple of friends. We were going to, Lok Keng, around Fanling area, beautiful place, where you basically go out. And between Taipo to Lok Keng, it's normally 10-20 minutes. It took us more than 2 hours to basically get there, because of the number of vehicles, number of cars, and number of bicycles, people. I thought that was, a strange phenomenon. So I had some small, if you like, money, for research. I talked to a few people. I got, colleagues. I said, look, why don't we study what is happening now? So we got a few students and basically run out, a few questionnaires. We sent out actually on site, right? So we were basically doing that. And we found out that, eventually I call that, something else. I call that, SARS SARS induced, paranoia, something like that, because naturally the moment people hear about SARS, so they start thinking. So people were not, traveling out and going to different places, but they preferred to go into the country parks. They prepared to go into the natural environment, so natural areas. And so we had, I had, maybe close to 2,000, or whatever, respondents. So fast forward, and a lot of people have been asking, yes, certainly, when this started, not really in a happy way, not in a happy mood, but I thought maybe we can also look at this, at the moment and basically see whether we can find similarities, or maybe we can see things that we can do, as far as management, is concerned. So we put together a very simple proposal. Proposal is still on the way, but I have done, very simple studies with basically, a few students. The difference then and the difference now is that in this period of time, people basically do go out until, I think until November. The large number of people was not always seen because people were still maintaining their social distancing, right? So you don't go, in a group. At the time of SARS, people were all, together. In fact, they were even doing what we call eco challenges, right? So they were challenging each other to see how far you can go, where you can go. So those were the things, but certainly, again, now people are more into, what I call soft adventures, or maybe what we will refer to as leisure, right? So leisure, doing leisure sometimes at home, sometimes nearby home. If you are looking at the promenades, the waterfront areas now in Hong Kong, from Tsuen Wan to, I've not been to Tsim Sha Tsui waterfront for a very long time, but Sha Tin area, Ma On Shan area here, from Chinese University to Tai Po, you come out on a Saturday, you will be surprised to see the number of people that are basically, in that direction. Of course, a certain percentage, maybe you find 1%, 2% of people, if they are in that form, they get their masks off because naturally, yes, you need a bit of air, but 90% of people are still conducting their activities basically with their masks on. So that's, again, to show to you that people adhere more to the health issue than basically, looking at exercising or going out for, again, the health issue. So there are a few, but this is along the way. I think let's see how it will go, as we move on.
So you are currently conducting some sort of research, and
yeah, I have questionnaires going on. I have questionnaires, going on at the moment. Yeah.
So we will be looking forward to know the result later when you have them.
Yeah, well, I pray they come. Well, this is research, so however it comes out, we will certainly be trying to publish and see how it goes. Yeah, I mean, I will be very happy to come back later on and see, if I can also do a presentation to show that. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a question, so I'm gonna put it out there. So I encourage also others, if you have any questions for Dr. Marafa, we're happy to receive them and to already transition into questions. So it's not only me asking. I see Professor Brian King is here. That was here a year ago in your seat, Dr. Marafa. And so Brian is asking, there you are. Hello, Brian.
You can ask a question. Hey, Brian. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry about the corporate backdrop.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. So are you reading the questions, or yeah, I saw.
Up to you. Do you want me to read it, or do you want me to read it out, or?
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice. Yeah,
Okay,
I like listening.
Okay, good, good. So Lawal, thank you. It's very entertaining when you share and love your presentation. Okay, I hope this question's not too left field. So it's basically about the global south. So historically, tourism has been more distributed towards developing countries over time as people travel further. You know, they travel increasingly long haul. But the outlook for developing world looks, I'm using the word bleak, as developed world consumers stay closer to home. So my question is, I'm a little bit pessimistic at the moment. I'm going to ask, are you able to stay positive about the prospects for destinations in, say, South Pacific Islands, Africa, South Asia, etc., with all the sort of inequities of vaccine diplomacy and all the rest of it? I'm sorry, I missed the first bit of your presentation, so apologies if you covered this early on, but I'd love to get your feeling about this. You know, are you able to stay optimistic? Because I'm assuming you feel tourism can bring some benefits to developing countries, and you know, obviously the whole balance sheet is being rearranged at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I mean, Brian, I think that is totally true. I think two things here. Developing countries generally, and then of course we have what we call small island states, small island, you know, Fiji, you know, and so on, and others. So for developing countries, and that covers everybody, that covers South America, that covers, you know, Africa, there is a lot of dependence on tourism money. Some countries actually have up to 20% of their GDP. I mean, you know, many more. You know, Brian, you know very well. You know Gambia, you know Kenya, you know, and all those places. And this is where you have, you know, wildlife as well, you know, and others, you know, that are basically attractive to people. So I think as we are seeing now, and then in addition to this, in the beginning and up till now, those areas, of course, minus Brazil, and then minus South Africa, but generally a large number of them have recorded lesser numbers, you know, of the COVID, you know, than other places. And so you can see that there is demand, you know, like I said, I've got, you know, these people. Actually, I was talking to someone, you know, from Romania just about 2 days ago. So there is already demand for people to go, you know, into Africa for safari. And that is also the same thing with basically people going to Maldives, for example. So Maldives is also, you know, trying to queue into that. Maldives as SID, right? Small island state, right? Small island state. And so one of the reasons that I think, right, there is no strong conviction, but one of the reasons is that they are moving into that direction because they need the money, basically to keep up with what they are doing. So when tourism stopped in some of these African countries, then looting of biodiversity basically became a main thing. I mean, poaching basically came back. So people were poaching, and that continued. And then, of course, you know, like bushmeat, right? Something like bushmeat, you know, so basically, you know, also came back. For small island states that, you know, naturally depend on marine biodiversity, so that also basically started, you know, becoming terribly affected because tourists were not coming. So both NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and indeed the proponents of tourism are looking into this and making this, you know, a reason, you know, for people to get back into tourism. So that's what I see. But certainly there is more to that. that we may be able to see at a later stage.
Great, thanks, Lawal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to switch a little bit back to Hong Kong now, and a little bit towards the vision of the sustainable tourism model, perhaps. So you as an expert, and we also have Brian here, maybe both of you can chip in on that, but essentially wondering whether you think that sustainable tourism model is possible in Hong Kong's context, and are there any good examples that Hong Kong could follow on how to develop a sustainable tourism strategy based on what we read in the current blueprint. There is really a missing component on how to achieve sustainable tourism for Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, I think we have gone through that for a very long time. I mean, back again, like in 2003, 2004, when we saw this SARS pandemic, and immediately after that, that was when we started telling the government and people who can listen that we can use our natural resources to actually boost tourism. That was there. But we had also a booster in 1999. That was one of the governments. Every year they do the policy address. Every year there is a policy address. So if you can look at the policy address of 1999, that was when they first highlighted the natural environment of Hong Kong as a major issue. Fast forward in 2001, I think, or 2002, I have the figures, I have the documents. So the other policy address now emphasized that now we can use, that was when they started the jingle of Hong Kong World Asia City or something like that. There was that jingle that started in the 15, 20 years ago. So they now realize that there is a lot of possibility to use our natural resources. This is basically a quote, to use our natural resources to promote tourism. That's a quote from that document. So we now said, okay, this is what we see. People are basically doing all this, so why can't we? So fast forward by 2006, 2007, and so on, we thought, okay, we can now put in sustainable tourism into basically what you were doing. And that was right at about the time the Hong Kong government created what they call Sustainable Development Council, which is basically a call from the global, global experts. So we were pushing, but the issue is a lot of people were still looking at sustainable tourism as something, from somewhere, but that is not the case. I mean, the mass tourism that Hong Kong is known for can actually be interjected with elements of sustainable tourism. That simply means, to make, if you like, to make the tourists happy, the guests, let them enjoy whatever they are doing without so much, wastage. Let also the local people think positive, right? That, okay, these guys are actually not intruding, they are really improving whatever we have. And then by the time the tourists and the local people are basically happy, then that means the natural environment is being kept as it is. So we are not wasting, we are not degrading, we are actually, keeping complement. And then encourage people to basically do, sustainable business and, link it up. And I will give you one example, and I will not mention the name. I think this is a public stuff. If I mention the name, I think Brian might know, but this is one guy who actually went to Hong Tai. You guys know Hong Tai? Was it Hong Tai? Hong Tai, there is Hong Tai, there is Wing On. Those were very big travel agents in Hong Kong, travel agents. If you want to travel, you have to go there, you book your ticket, they give you all these papers showing you where the itinerary is, and so on. So this guy haven't learned the tenets of, if you like, green systems or whatever, and, sustainability and so on. So when he got there, and he was at that time senior, right? He got a senior position. And then he talked to the manager that why do they always produce these papers? You know, because when you go to the office, you see all the papers. If you are going to Taiwan, these are the papers. If you are going to Malaysia, these are the papers. So you pick one paper and you say, okay, this is what I want to do. So he kind of said, let us not print these papers. Let us do this on demand. So the guy will come and sit. So where are you going? I'm going to Guangzhou. So what do you want to see? I want to do this. I want to do this. Then you print out the itinerary for this guy. If this guy likes it and his group, certainly, then they sign in for it. The immediate senior manager to that person refused to buy this idea because they thought the office will not be colorful anymore and not attractive. But the boss, who is a major stakeholder, reasoned, and he said, okay, let's give this a go. They gave it a go. This was 2002, I guess, very early, or maybe 2004, I can't remember. The bottom line is, in 1 year, they saved 600,000 Hong Kong dollars for not printing those brochures, and their business did not fall. So this is simply a wastage. They have reduced wastage, they have saved paper, and to us, they have actually saved biodiversity as well. So there are many things, that can be done as well. Very recently, I think in the last year or in the last 2 years, the Hong Kong government was making consultations, looking at ecotourism, what they can do. And so we were talking here because they came to interview. I suggested glamping, right? So glamping, because people do camping anyway. So why don't you do an element of glamping that will attract higher premium? And so, so these are things that people can do. Now we have the Lantau development plan. You probably must have read Lantau Tomorrow. I can easily say that 80% of Lantau is actually, what I will call green. So not destroyed yet. And so there are opportunities to basically inject that concept of sustainability, in the tourism industry. And like I said, mass tourism can actually accommodate some aspects of sustainable tourism as well. And we will not be losing much if we do that.
That's right. That was a great example. Just we can think of a small thing that doesn't have to be always in our face, doesn't always have to concern the tourist or the person who consumes, or doesn't affect their comfort or their experience, but actually it could be at the back end, like just not printing the brochure can have a massive impact, and other many things. I'd like to also invite other people if there are any more questions, because we're going to have to wrap up quite soon. And I'm wondering if anybody has specific questions. Definitely going to be very happy to share more of the current research that you have. I think we are seeing sort of the similarities between the SARS pandemic and then current, when you mentioned that we are going outside and into the green spaces. We have seen that also with this situation right now. I think there is a lot of opportunities there too. For, as what you said, maybe why don't we develop better that tourism that is in the countryside of Hong Kong, in the campsites? Can we have it a bit more on a higher level, rather than just very rough sleeping somewhere in the tent? Not everybody's made for it. Not everybody's cut out for that kind of adventure.
Yeah.
And so having an option for people to also get closer to the nature, which is important in terms of appreciating it and preserving it later, but making it more convenient for those maybe who have never tried that before in their life, I think is an important component. Do we have any questions? Anybody in the audience would like to ask anything from Dr. Marafa? I think it was very, very insightful so far. Do we have any more questions? Oh, we've got a question from Kelsey. Thank you, Dr. Marafa, for sharing your insights. In terms of people-dense tourism options, how long might it be for the cruise ship industry to recover? Any ideas on that? And do you think this could be a good opportunity for the cruise industry to ramp up their sustainability measures to stay ahead of the curve before business fully resumes?
Yeah, well, I think that's also insightful. Sadly, I'm not so much knowledgeable about the cruise industry, but all I want to say is I think they were kind of the first hit when the COVID basically came down seriously. The cruise industry, was basically hit, and with the social distancing, with the need for spacing, right? So spacing. I think the cruise industry will basically have to innovate. I'm not sure how, but I have to say to you that we also do what we call final year project, right? So finally, the undergraduate students will pick a topic and do a final year project. So one of my first final year project students in the group was actually, I really studied the cruise tourism. And so at that time I was, very young and I was bullish. I go to people, right away. So I went with him to the office of the cruise lines in Timsachoy at the waterfront. So they agreed. They actually offered him a trip on the cruise. That time you can do 1-day trip and you go in and come back. So he went, and basically came back. And so we got some information. So at that time, I just knew that, it's a very much viable industry, but then certainly something, had to be done. But so fast forward, some of the cruise lines stopped coming because the waters in Hong Kong at that part of Hong Kong were not deep enough. So that's the reason why the new cruise terminal basically was built, and then some of them certainly started coming back. So we know a bit of that, but I think, probably Brian might say something. Brian, maybe you can help in that. So,
It's about knowledge sharing. I'm not sure Brian has anything about cruises.
Yeah, well.
Another time. I think this is Lawal's show, so.
Yeah.
So, we can talk. Well, I'm sure we'll have discussions another time.
Yeah. I mean, this is my take. Yeah. So it will probably be, because psychologically, people will still remember what happened, with the cruise lines. But probably if the vaccines are all on and people are allowed to travel, I mean, yes, I wouldn't mind going as well. It's a long time I've not been on a cruise. So.
I have experience. We have discussed quite a lot the cruise ship tourism during my studies in Europe, specifically in Croatia and in Dubrovnik, and especially the sustainability side of the things when such a huge ship comes down and essentially just lets 2,000, 3,000 people come into the destination at one moment for just a very short period of time, and the impact of that. I'm not sure there is much to be innovated on that because the destination cannot expand if there is so many people coming down. So that's definitely one thing that is harder to be innovated on. But then, of course, also the machine itself, there is lots of space for innovation for the technology, I believe. I know that some cruise ships now are, say, burning their food waste to power the ship, actually. But there's definitely needs to be much more done on that, because we know that powering a cruise ship is not a small job, and it's still the emissions from such a big city on the water. The impact of it is huge. It's immense. Definitely good downtime to think about solutions. I'm not sure the industry have been able to survive, because I know that lots of ships have been just docking and empty for quite some time now, I guess. So not a good time for them, perhaps. Hopefully we can see something more positive coming up after the pandemic. So I don't think we have any more questions. Seems the chat is pretty quiet today. Maybe it's a good sign, because it was a very engaging talk. I learned a lot, interesting insights for sure. I'd like to thank our team, Karen and Carrie, Yuki, Lucia, and everybody who has put together the talk. Of course, thank you very much, Dr. Marafa. Thank you, Brian, also for chipping in, for everybody who participated today. I hope we can welcome you again for another talk about your research and observations from the current pandemic and where we're moving. We're also going to discuss later this year the blueprint for tourism for Hong Kong, because we're deeply concerned about how it is structured right now, and we really want to bring the sustainability more into that space. I think the pandemic is an opportunity for this. We have seen ramping initiatives around sustainability, climate change, and everything in the recent couple of years. So I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to team up and to do something more to push that agenda a bit forward. Thank you so much for attending. That's all for today. Lovely to meet you, and we'll see you soon.